So finally the day is coming. Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. is going to happen this Saturday. Super excited to see this fight, but they are making these rules and regulations just to make it unenjoyable pretty much. Let's just call it what it is. Both guys were professional boxers, some of the highest level boxers of all time. They're around the same age of Bernard Hopkins, who fought for championships, right? Which is a little bit weird when you look at it logically. So here are the rules for Tyson versus Jones Jr. Number 1, it's going to be considered an exhibition bout. Number 2, the fight is going to be 8 rounds. Each round is only going to be 2 minutes long. It's a very short fight, 16 minutes of action. Number 3, they don't have to use headgear, which is really good. Number 4, they're going to wear 12-ounce gloves instead of the usual heavyweights, 10 ounces. Just a little bit heavier. It's not going to be much of a difference for them. Usually sparring gloves are like anywhere from 14 to 16, sometimes even 18 ounces. So 12 ounces is not much at all. Number 5, if either fighter gets cut, the fight is going to be called. It's going to be over. That is a bit alarming because there's a possibility that first punch that gets in there causes a cut and the fight stops, but hopefully there is no cut at all. Number 6, there are no knockouts allowed. Now, when they say that, does it mean there's not going to be a winner if there's a knockout, or they're not allowed to go for knockouts? I don't know how they're going to regulate no knockouts, because punches fly really quick, especially from these two, Tyson and Roy Jones. I don't think the ref is going to get there in time before, let's say, Roy Jones connects with a big right hand and drops Tyson, or Tyson hits Roy Jones with a leaping left hook and knocks him out. Like, how is the ref going to stop that from happening? And then number 7, there is no winner. No matter what happens, there's not going to be a winner, but that doesn't matter to fans. We can see who wins. We definitely don't need boxing judges to tell us who's winning. I mean, they always get it wrong, so it doesn't even matter. In fact, I'm kind of happy there are no judges. But I cannot wait, man. Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones Jr. is a fight people were even talking about back in like around 2003-ish. And it's really interesting to talk about this fight and break it down a bit, because it's like we're going back in the past and talking about what they used to do and how it implements today. Because even though they're not the same fighters, even though they're older and they've lost their speed, they lost a bunch of things, reaction timing, reflexes, all that stuff, they still keep technique. They still keep power, and they still have their tendencies. They have their habits. All that stuff are still intact. When you talk about skills and techniques and all that stuff, they're still there. You never lose it. It's all part of muscle memory, especially when you're going back at the training camp. All that stuff start to revive out of nowhere. You know, you start to do the same things you used to do. So let's talk about attributes, right? Easiest thing to talk about. Who has a better chin? Mike Tyson. Who has more power? Mike Tyson. Who's faster? Probably Roy Jones Jr. still. Who has better cardio? Obviously Roy Jones Jr. He's also been more active. There's an X factor in that. Roy Jones Jr.'s last fight was getting to 3 years ago. It's been over 2 years since he last fought. As for Mike Tyson, he has not fought in over 15 years. So when you're talking about feeling the ring and getting into the groove of it, of actual competition, Roy Jones Jr. is way ahead of Mike Tyson in that department. He's been active and more prepared to go into competition again because he's done it so recently. But this fight is supposed to mimic somewhat of a sparring match, so they both have obviously been sparring, which means that the experience factor is probably not as strong as it usually would be with bright lights, maybe an audience around, all that stuff that can be part of a professional fight. So when you look at all the attributes, it can seem a bit even. Both guys are in very good shape. Mike Tyson like transformed in front of us. It looks like he's back to his younger days. When you look at his physique, his body looks extremely young, and I don't know if he had a little bit of help outside of actual training, but it is pretty alarming how ripped he has gotten, how jacked he's become after coming back from how he used to look. Now those are the attributes. Technically, this fight gets very interesting because both guys are known for their signature left hooks. Mike Tyson focuses the body more than Roy Jones does. Obviously, he's more of a swarmer, where Roy Jones Jr. is somewhat of a sniper. He attacks from a long range. He has a massive reach advantage over Mike Tyson. He's a little bit taller as well. He has a piston right straight, very good bolo uppercuts, and those whipping left hooks. There's also more fluidity to his movement, to his footwork. He's able to move around the cage a lot more seamlessly than Tyson does. Every action about Tyson is noticeable. Everything he does is dramatic. Big hooks, big head movements, huge steps into angles, and that could be a bit of a problem when he comes up against a guy like Roy Jones Jr. Is he able to get inside of the longer and faster Roy Jones Jr.? If he is able to bob and weave his way inside due to his peekaboo style, able to slip the jab, slip that straight right hand, and get past any kind of intercepting uppercuts and stuff like that, Tyson is going to win this fight. Tyson gets in close on Roy Jones, Tyson wins. 100%. Tyson doesn't cut off the ring that well. He takes off these angles and gives opponents openings to get away from the ropes. But looking at some of Roy Jones' latest fights, his speed and his footwork has greatly declined. If this was a prime Roy Jones, I would be very confident in his ability to break away from the pressure and escape the ropes. Now, because he's so plodding and so much slower to move, I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. Tyson's movement, Tyson's footwork resembles a lot more of his younger days than Roy Jones' footwork does. Roy Jones Jr. tends to turtle up, put up a tight high guard, and block the oncoming shots. That is not going to be a great thing when he's fighting Mike Tyson. Tyson hits a little bit too hard, and historically, whenever fighters try to shell up against Tyson, he always is able to find the openings and knock his opponent out. It always happens. Roy Jones doesn't clinch that much, but he's going to have to clinch up with Tyson to stop the aggression. If Roy Jones can keep his distance, Roy Jones is going to win this fight. Obviously, he has the reach advantage. Obviously, he has a speed advantage. Obviously, he has a better jab. And if he's able to keep that jab on Tyson, because perhaps Tyson's speed has declined, he will be in line of sight of the right hand afterward. One jab for Roy Jones, that right hand is ready to go and connect on the chin all day. And I don't know, because of the age factor, if Tyson or Roy Jones can take a shot from each other. Tyson can probably take a few. Roy Jones probably can't take one big one. I think if Roy Jones connects with a hard right hand to the chin, I think Tyson goes down as well. So we all agree, Tyson wins in close, Roy Jones wins from far. Now, the most important question is, who has the better ability to control that space between the boxers? That distance between them that Tyson has to close in and Roy Jones has to lengthen away. Who has the better ability to control that? Can Tyson get in better than Roy Jones can move away from him? Looking at Tyson's peekaboo style, theoretically, he should be able to slip the jabs and the crosses. But do you know what the problem is about that style? About his bobbing and weaving on the inside? Roy Jones has that left hook. They call him Captain Hook for a reason. He has that long left hook, extremely fast. You can see in his training footages as well. Very fast left hook even today. He's very good at fading away from it too. In case Mike Tyson, takes it and tries to counter back or something like that, Roy Jones is going to clear the field from it. Also, in case Tyson does get a little bit closer, Roy Jones has that close range bolo right uppercut. These two attacks, the left hook and the bolo right uppercut, are going to be some intercepting issues for Tyson's head movement. So absolutely there are ways that Tyson could get on the inside safely and connect clean on Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones also keeps his hands very low. You can see in the training footages as well. Even if he's blocking, I think Tyson can rip to the body and go to the head. When you guard against Mike Tyson and don't clinch up with him, he takes advantage of almost everybody. There's almost no one that can guard effectively on Mike Tyson, right? Because of his shot selection, because of how precise his hands are, and how technically he picks his targets. The best way to stop Tyson from doing much to you is clinching, right? If he gets in close, you want to clinch up with him. Of course, Tyson's going to be bigger than Roy Jones. He could probably maneuver a little bit before the ref breaks it up. But these counter shots from Roy Jones Jr. are going to be key for him to win this fight, right? If he can't keep the distance and Mike Tyson's trying to make his way in, that left hook, right uppercut are going to be his key weapons. But this is going to come down to reaction timing from Roy Jones. And that is an aspect of his game that he has greatly lost through age. When you talk about an aging boxer, power is the last thing to go. Both these guys are going to have power, while speed is the first thing to go, usually. And that is bad news for Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones' whole game was built off of his speed and reflexes. It's the reason why he didn't have to be so fundamentally sound. He was doing things that a lot of trainers would never teach their boxers because he had this innate ability, this natural ability to make things work because of some of his athleticism and because of his speed and reflexes, right? The fact that both boxers have greatly aged, Tyson's talents of pure power and fundamentals are never going to leave. They're always going to be a part of him forever. The fundamentals stem from muscle memory. You just got to train a little bit and they revive. They're back. While Roy Jones lacked that department. One of the biggest criticisms of Roy Jones ever since he started was his lack of fundamentals, and those are extremely important when you get older. So without the same kind of athleticism and speed, what does Roy Jones have to fall back to? Notice the way he's been fighting recently. He changed his style a bit, and ultimately I think that's a big factor, probably the biggest factor in this fight coming in with Mike Tyson. Tyson can knock him out with one punch. Tyson has better fundamentals. Tyson has better defense. He has a better guard. He may have a better ability to get on the inside. I think it's like 50-50 there. He just has to watch out from the counter punches and watch out from the jab and cross and leaping left hook from a distance. That's pretty much it. Everywhere else, Tyson has an advantage. Now, people might be talking about the cardio aspect of the fight. Roy Jones Jr. definitely has better cardio. He can last in a fight a lot longer than Mike Tyson can. Mike Tyson is going to start gassing out probably toward the end of the fight. But, again, you have to remember, this fight is 8 rounds, 2 minutes each. It's a 16-minute fight with 7 breaks in between each 2 minutes. That gives Tyson a lot of chances, man. If this is a 12-round fight, 3-minute rounds, Roy Jones has a massive advantage in this fight, and it might even change the outcome completely. But if Mike Tyson is going to win, it's probably going to be anywhere from early to mid rounds. due to TKO if the ref allows it. We're just talking about if the ref, allows this legendary clash to actually commence the way it should be, This fight's worth to lose your job for. My official prediction is I'm going to go with Mike Tyson in this one. If the ref allows it, if it happens so quickly the ref cannot get in there fast enough, I see Mike Tyson TKOing Roy Jones Jr. probably 5th round or 6th round.